This is The Close-Up. Conversations about creativity. From the studios of the Beijing Film Academy in Beijing, China, here is Jim Chabin.
Welcome to Beijing. Markus Lanxinger is with us. He is one of the world's busiest and most respected stereographers. His work can be seen in blockbuster movies, including last year's Transformers and X-Men Apocalypse, The Amazing SpiderMan, and many, many others. He's an Austrian, but he's worked in London, Los Angeles, and he's now based in Hong Kong. Welcome, Markus.
Thank you, Jim.
How is the technical capability of the crews in China versus what you work with in London or Hollywood on a big blockbuster?
Well, from a production standpoint, I would say they're pretty much almost on the same level with Western crews. There's, minor, minuscule differences, but they don't add up to like a big difference, I would say. But where the big difference for me comes is still in the post-production side. That's where I see most of the issues in China, honestly.
So when you're working here and you've been assigned to come here to make a movie, is language an issue for you, or are you able to communicate, and how do you do that?
In Hong Kong films, it's been easier, to be honest. There's, at least the above-the-line people, the directors, the producers, the cinematographer. Those guys I have no issues communicating with, but when it comes to below the line, camera crew, some of them, it's very difficult to communicate with. So, you have a translator and, it works out in the end.
Works out.
Yeah, exactly. And you have Google Translate these days. It's so easy.
Talk about the Chinese movie fan when you go to the Cineplex and you see them. What do they like and what do they want when they go to the movies?
Now that the market is opening up, they can really see a big difference, a big gap in between them. You have the big Hollywood blockbusters with big budgets. And then you got, some Chinese movies that don't have the budget and don't have the certain know-how in certain areas. So I think that difference is going to show.
95% of the tickets for Guardians of the Galaxy in China were 3D. 94% of Jurassic World, 3D tickets. So it's the biggest 3D market in the world. Why do they love 3D from your point of view?
Well, I'd like to reference to James Cameron, actually. What he said was very interesting, that a lot of the people in China, a lot of the population, they've never been to movie theaters before. So for them, there's a lot of first-timers. So they go and see a movie. For them to go see a 3D movie, it's the most natural thing in the world. Whereas audiences in the West have been, seeing films for 100 years now. And are very much used to seeing it the traditional way. So I think it's a lot more in the Western culture that films were 2D and flat. So I think that change was very difficult. So in China, I think that happened because when they just opened up the market and put in all these digital theaters with 3D, that's what the audiences are going to see. And now the new generation goes into a theater, sees a 3D film. They expect every film to be that way now.
You've worked with great directors everywhere. When you are around a great director, or you feel you're around a great director, and you leave and someone would ask you, what do great directors have in common? What would you say?
They're dedicated. I mean, totally dedicated to what they're doing. They are 24/7. You can tell. It's like a person who is like on an offset, constantly thinking about the movie and thinking how he can make it better. I think that's something all the great directors have in common.
What do you look for in someone that you can identify with and say, this is a person I would hire when you're looking to bring people on to work for you? What do you look for?
Well, first of all, I think the most important one is passion. If you don't have passion in what you're doing, then it's maybe not the right thing for you. So I think passion first and foremost, dedication, obviously, and it would be the third one. I mean, love is sort of passion. Love for what you're doing, yeah.
Raman Wei, who we talked to a couple days ago in Shanghai, said, I was desperate to work in this business, so I look for young people to be as desperate as I was for the job. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting, because when we talk to filmmakers, we don't really hear, I want to see a resume with these 3 or 4 items on it. Mm-hmm. It's more chemistry, it's more of something you can't measure that you're looking for.
And it's also a personality thing. I think, you want to work with people that, honestly, you want to work with people that you can be friends with, that you sort of agree with on multiple levels, not just in a filmmaking perspective, but in a broader sense, of like human being, because filmmaking is such a powerful medium and so many things come together. So if there's like one element that's in the film that's sort of not agreeing with each other, I think it can already like sort of spoil the whole big picture.
Right.
So I think it's very important that you establish a team, you know, and all the teams I've worked with, I've been pretty lucky.
We should let our viewers know that we are actually taping this interview in the virtual reality lab in a studio at Beijing Film Academy, where Professor Charles Wang tells us that the young people coming up through the program here are as interested and as comfortable working in digital cinema as they are in virtual reality, and that they're fascinated and excited by both. I think of someone we both admire tremendously, Ong Lee, who just finished shooting Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk in Atlanta with a friend of ours, Dimitri Portelli, in 3D, high frame rate, 120 frames per second, digital. Are we looking at a future where if you're working in this industry and you want to work in this industry, you're going to be working on a lot of different palettes and a lot of technologies? Or what advice, how do you see that?
Well, absolutely. And I think we're going to see a lot of interesting work, because here you have people, you know, you mentioned Ang Lee, who does not come from that generation, but yet he experiments and like tries new things, which is exciting. And then you have this new generation of filmmakers who are just entering, and they grew up in the digital realm. For them, film is something, you know, they probably might not have seen. Some of them do in film school, you still do some film, but in general, I think it's going to produce a lot of interesting content with people that come from that sort of background and have digital sort of in the blood, and, you know, are able to maybe open up and experiment more, have been experimenting their whole life with digital.
You lead a very interesting and admirable career, and it's great to follow it, and we wish you the best of luck, and please come back and tell us more as you can.
Well, thank you very much, Jim.
Okay.
Happy to do so.
Okay, thanks for joining us.
The Close-Up is produced by the Advanced Imaging Society in Hollywood and powered by Barcode.